Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to another AZ Ray video. Today we're doing another amazing interview here, and I'm lucky to be joined by an amazing guest, Miss Jade Martinez. She has a master's in teaching and education, and she's also a singer too. So she's an awesome woman of many talents. And I have her on today because of her teaching background and her for her love of arts. I thought she was an apropos guest to deep dive on Abbott Elementary. So thank you so much for your time, Jade. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Arturo, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So, before we get started too much on the deep dive, could you tell us a little bit on your Abbott Elementary story? How'd you hear about the show? Your thoughts on the show? Like, how did you hear about it? How did you start um, just enjoying it? Because I know we've talked about we both like the show a lot, hence us talking about it. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your Abbott story.
Yeah, so I think I might have been on break one of these days. Maybe I want to say it was winter break. Maybe it was last year or the year before that when it came out. And at first I thought I don't want to watch a show about school. Like I'm teaching, it's too triggering. And so at first I was hesitant, but then I started watching it and it was so hilarious. I found myself just wanting to watch, binge watch next episode. And like I said, at first it was like, okay, I need to take a break because I'm on break. I don't want to look at teaching, but something about it was different than all the other shows that you see on TV related to teaching. It's like the office version of teachers, and the satire that it has is so relatable as teachers. I think we can all see ourselves in the characters. And because of the context, its relatability, how funny it is, it's a good show to watch that's lighthearted and it doesn't bring me anxiety or all the stress that comes with teaching. It's really enjoyable. And I have just gotten into it to where I can now kind of look at teaching from a third party point of view, and it's entertaining. So, yeah.
Oh, no, that makes sense. That's interesting. Okay, so you recently discovered it. You didn't watch it like when it first came out. You just, or did you always know about it and were just hesitant to pull the trigger all those times that you?
Yeah, I just thought, like, what's this hype? I don't want to join, jump on the bandwagon. But I understood it, and I see myself in Janine. Honestly see myself in almost all the characters.
Sure.
But I can relate to Janine the most in a way that's like, oh, girl, I see you. I remember being like that, and you want to save that person from no, like the heartbreak, and she's so new and naive, but at the same time fresh and full of ideas and just so positive. So just that character alone, I think, is what teachers are known for. Oh, that type A personality, but there's so many other traits that go into being a teacher, so many other, I think, characters that you'll see in school, like you see in this show.
No, absolutely. And yeah, Janine is a very likable, endearing character. She's definitely like that, like almost like this young child innocence, this like, this little baby deer thing that like you want them to succeed, but it's like, oh honey, like, things aren't always that way. But just a quick spoiler alert warning. We probably won't go too big into like spoiling things regarding the plot, but we might dive into different topics and whatnot. So for your best viewing pleasure, probably watch this after you've seen a couple episodes. Otherwise, we will have timestamps as we do in every other video, so you can watch this however you want to, or listen to it if you're listening to this via audio feed. And just another quick synopsis just to get into it. So, if you guys have never seen the show and you're like, hey, what the heck is Janine? Who are these different people? Could you give the audience like a very small synopsis of the plot of the story? You kind of hinted it to it, but just in case for someone's never heard of Abbott and they're still curious to, to engage or watch this episode or listen to it, can you tell them just a little bit about it? A little brief, little summary.
Yeah, so it's about a school in Philadelphia and the struggles that come with working at a public school. You have the principal, who is like the narcissist, the out of touch administrator, who is our leader, quote unquote. And then you have Janine, who is the main character. She has the main character energy. She's new, she's full of ideas and so excited to teach, but she's also very naive. And then you have Barbara, who is your veteran teacher. She's the one that's been there. She knows probably the most you can go to for help. And she's like the mother of the school. You have Gregory, which is Janine's love interest, and you kind of see their story play out. Are they, are they not? That kind of dynamic. And he is a little bit more structured, a little bit more of a rigid teacher. And then you have Jacob, who the school is mostly African American students, and he's the white teacher. So he's the minority of the majority. And he's corny, but he's really, I think, kind, and that teacher that, although they're corny, they really care. And then you have Melissa, and she's like the, I would say, non-conventional teacher. She can be hardcore, but also comes from a really good place. And so you get to see these dynamics of the teachers, but also with each other in a school. Sometimes they fight, sometimes they get along. It's like a family, it's their own community. And the storyline that plays out is just very entertaining, very relatable. And it's a good way to I think, end your evening if you're having a long day or whatever kind of day you're having. It's just really entertaining, and it's good. I think it's good for the soul, honestly.
No, it is. Thank you for that amazing synopsis. Thank you for that amazing summary, Jade. Appreciate it. No, it was amazing. It was perfect. And yeah, to your point, the episodes aren't too long. It's generally pretty family friendly. It's pretty PG, clean humor generally, and it's super funny, man. Like they don't really miss. Like some episodes are funnier than others, but they're all pretty funny and they all do a good job. All the teachers are funny in their own way, but it comes off, as you said earlier, very authentic, very relatable. It doesn't feel fake, doesn't feel forced. It feels very naturally inclined to their natural personalities. And you can relate to it, whether in your unique position, you have had like a teaching and educating background. I have as a little as well, but not as much as yourself. And then, or even as a student, you know what I mean? You have like that background as well too. I know you mentioned it earlier how like you were hesitant to like join and watching the show right away. I know for me personally, I was a little hesitant, but not as long as you. Like it was like I kept seeing like different friends of mine that were teachers or just posting little clips on social media, and dude, it was just so funny. I'm like, what show is this? And then they kept doing it, and then eventually, like one of the clips, it was just like I don't know, like it was just Janine. Like she does this really good job of like when she reacts to stuff, like she'll like kind of do this like passive aggressive smile or kind of rolls her eyes to stuff like, no, that's not really happening. And her reaction to it like added on to the punchline. I'm like, all right, I have to watch this show, and like I don't regret it at all. It was amazing. And just the caveat, my earlier comment about the relatability to students, we talked about a little bit in our previous conversation about like how I came from like a very poor like elementary school. So like I was talking to Jade prior to how like, dude, some of our field trips were just like going to Domino's, and we were like, yeah, that was our field trip. You know what I mean? And that was like super exciting for us. But now that I look back, I'm like, dang, that's pretty sad, right? And then like just other things too, like, dude, we never had enough chalk. If it was a chalk class, we'd have to sometimes ask another teacher, or sometimes like kids' parents would pitch in for like school supplies. We were always short on school supplies. We wouldn't have enough markers. Sometimes teachers would had to change lesson plans because some of the lessons plans were literally incomplete or something like that. But slowly but surely, it's not a complete sad violin. The school started to get money, but it was more as I was exiting and going into junior high and whatnot. So I've been there, dude. Like there's a lot of those scenarios where like I can like just relate, or like for example, I remember but like for I think it was first or second grade. I have to think. I think no, first grade. It was first grade. My first grade class was huge. And so I had one teacher, then I had two teachers, but now that I think about it, I had over like 70 classmates, which is huge. And we were all crammed in one little desk, and that's why they had two teachers. And sometimes we would get taught by one teacher, sometimes we get taught by the other teachers, and sometimes they would split us up in the same classroom and we'd have two different lessons. And so it's kind of confusing. And then sometimes we had second graders in our first grade class. I don't know what that meant, but one of those broke school problems.
It sounds like, so the funding, and that's another common theme throughout the show, is the lack of funding a lot of times falls on the teachers' shoulders. So if there's not enough teachers, because the funding isn't there, the money isn't there to pay them, they combine classes. So you might get a second and third grade combo class. You might get the teacher that has more students than the rest of the other teachers because they're veterans teachers. They know what they're doing, but also their caseload. They have way more students with different levels. They're coming in with below grade level standards or below grade level. And it can be overwhelming for the teachers, and ultimately the students are affected. But I think the theme that is reoccurring that you'll get every episode is teachers do the best they can with the resources, sometimes very little resources that they're given, and you have them helping each other. And because they're going through this together, they can commiserate, but also celebrate together the joys, the struggles of being a teacher.
No, absolutely right. And yeah, absolutely. And to get a little bit more real too, no, absolutely, because teachers are always more than teachers, right? In many ways, like you're almost like another parent to a kid. And I've taught older kids and younger kids. Like I taught like a little bit in college, so like 18, 19, 20. And I also taught little kids like K through 12. And the whole way, it's hard almost not to feel like a parent, right? Because like what they learn, the education, the responsibility, like it falls on your shoulders, and you feel this pressure, this responsibility. And it's almost hard not to feel that like paternal, parent, maternal energy onto those kids. And so you go above and beyond, right? And they have like issues at home or regardless what it is. And like um it's a very unique thing, right? Because it's not like a job, right? And a job, there's always a distance, right? Even if you have a chill boss, right? That's person still your boss and you're still a student. The lines kind of blur a little bit with teacher student, not because they don't have that like authoritarian figure, because it also depends on the type of person you are. Not everybody wants to be like a tyrant per se, right? Sometimes we have more of like a genuine like connection with the students and vice versa. And like if your kid isn't, or your student isn't understanding the lesson and the lesson plan, you could be a tyrant and like, well, that's too bad. This is the lessons plan, right? But most of the time, especially someone that enjoys their job, will probably think, okay, all right, this the student isn't retaining the information in this way. Maybe I have to present it in this different type of way or something like that, right? And so, yeah, teachers end up being a lot of things, right? Sometimes almost like a psychologist, a parent, just a friend, somebody they can count on, just all kinds of things. And yeah, no, teachers are amazing, man. They definitely need to get paid more, and probably, yeah, I don't know, the unsung heroes of the world, honestly. Like I almost wish there was like an award ceremony just for teachers, because I feel like sometimes we do a little bit of too much celebrity worship, but we don't recognize the people that actually do make the difference in the community. And most of those times it's like, teachers or professors or like scientists, researchers, activists, people that are actually in there and doing changes. And not to disrespect the arts, I'm a big fan of the arts. I like film, cinema, music as much as the next person, but I think other things deserve to get that same notoriety. I think I went a little bit of a ramble, but yeah, teachers are
No,
awesome.
I think you're onto a good point. Just there is a Teacher of the Year award. I know the states have them, but it's more widely spread throughout California, like California as a whole. And so I think maybe more recognition on the district's part, maybe something additional. It could be Teacher of the Month. Every district is different. So some districts do have that, like the Teacher of the Month. I know my online school did have that. Every month there would be a Teacher of the Month. But I think, just to your point, just more appreciation, more recognition, but that's what the job that comes with the territory. It's honestly to be expected. And at this point, any recognition is nice, but even if it's not given, we kind of expect that. And we have to show up knowing that even if we don't get that, we're still doing the best we can. And I recognize myself as every other teacher should, every teacher, excuse me, should recognize and acknowledge and receive the recognition, I think, internally, even if we don't get the praise we hope we could get, at least we know we're doing the best art we can. And then you have days where you have students that give you that praise and it's so unexpected. And those are the days, and I know every teacher says this, but those are the days that you begin to, the days you question, oh my gosh, what am I doing? You have that one student that gives you exactly the words of encouragement you needed at that moment just to get you through. And those days, I think, really showcase what a challenge it is to be a teacher, but also the reason we're doing it, which is for our community, to serve and to educate and to allow these children opportunities, to be there to support them so that they know we're here, we're supporting you, and we want you to succeed ultimately. At the end of the day, that's all of us want.
Wow, quite the poet, Jane. Very well said. So, you guys are hearing that. You guys have a teacher, professor that you like. Send them an email, send them a message. Tell them that you appreciated them, that you liked them. They made an impact on your life because they appreciate that. And generally speaking, teachers are pretty cute and they generally remember most of their students. So even if they haven't heard of you or heard from you in forever, years, decades, whatever, the sentiment will be still be appreciated. So thank your teachers, guys. They do a lot. And then they get a lot of schlack that they don't even deserve when it comes to like all the pressures of the districts and like assessments and how, like the US, like other countries are like, oh, they're not testing as high and blah, blah, blah. And completely neglecting that most of the time, the reason why students don't score as high is way more related to the socioeconomic background than it is based on anything that the actual teacher does as well. And then, yeah, there's way more layers to that too. But yeah, thank your teachers, guys. But just to transition back to Abbott, and you're talking about just, of course, that self-love and self-appreciation as a teacher, as an educator, but we're all humans. We have our ups and downs and stuff. And but going back to the show, who are some of your favorite characters? Because I know these characters, because they're very realistic, they have their ups and downs too. But who are some of your favorites? Do you have like maybe a top two, top three, or maybe a one, or who stands out to you? Who's like maybe the person like when you're watching that episode, it's like, all right, my dude's on or my dudette, my girl's on, and like you're gonna be excited for what they have to say because it's gonna be funny, it's gonna be interesting, or maybe it might be insightful. Like who are your go-tos?
Yeah, I think all of them and different episodes for different reasons. So in the beginning, you're feeling like, okay, I'm more resonating with Janine because of her storyline. But as the show progresses, you get to learn each character, and it's not so black and white. They're not so black or white. There's a gray area with that teacher. Like Barbara comes off as very strict, narrow-minded, but then you get to know her, and she's like the mother of the school where they're trying to stay relevant, but it's very difficult because so many things have changed. So sometimes I like Barbara, maybe because she reminds me of my mom a lot. And she just has that motherly nature, but she has so much insight. She's been doing this a long time. She's gone through lots of administrators. She knows this school. She knows her students, and she knows what works and what doesn't. So I feel like the respect is there with Barbara because of her, I think, wisdom, her experience in this field. But then I love Melissa because of her grit, because of how intense she could be, very straightforward, very blunt, and her words could cut deep. But at the same time, I respect it because she's real, she's honest with you. So I just feel like all of them. And I think Janine, at first, I was resonating with her, but sometimes she just irritates me because I'm like, oh, I remember being like that. Oh, girl, you are so annoying. Like, stop, sit down. Or she just will do things and say things that's like, oh, it's so idealistic. Like when you go into teaching, you think it's going to be one way and everything is just, oh, my kids are going to be this way. I'm going to be this way. And then reality hits and it's completely different. And you have to figure out how am I going to get through this, even though I thought it was going to be this way. But that's where the support comes in with the other characters. So even though Janine can be irritating and annoying, like her intention, she's so pure and so new to this. There's a lot of, I think, support around her. And maybe not all new teachers don't have that. And so I look at that and I think, man, I wish all teachers had that support system. Sometimes they kind of make fun of her, give her a hard time, but they really do support her. But I also like shout out to the principal because she's so bad. Like the satire behind that, she's so bad but so entertaining. Like she's probably my favorite character because of how awful she is. Because that's truly how some administrators can be. Like it's laughable. Like, is this really happening? Yeah, that happens. That happens in education. Mm-hmm.
No, that's yeah. Yeah, if I were to give my picks, like my favorites, yeah, Ava's my favorite too. Mr. Johnson's always like the janitor is always like
Yeah,
another guy because
he's
like
hilarious.
just they're random and just like he supposedly he's done all these things, but then he low key hasn't. He's just exaggerating. He's trying to make it like he's this man of mystery that's done everything, and then sometimes he admits he doesn't, and then he does, and I don't know. He's kind of an enigma, but he's funny. And then to your point, Ava's just so ridiculous, and like she says a lot of things like, did she just say that? You
Yeah,
know, like a lot of things that people should probably keep in their brains and stuff. And then she gets away with stuff, but like it's it's I think it just speaks to her like acting ability
mm-hmm.
of the because she's
Yes,
also like a I want to see her. She does stand up too, and I know she's like performing right now too. So I want to see her stand up. I think she's just that good of a comedian that like even though she's like being ridiculous and to your earlier point, a little bit more conceited, like vain, narcissistic, but she's like charming somehow.
yeah,
She reels you in. Like she's like you can tell that like I don't know if it's like maybe like a mask, a facade, or there's something else, or just the fact that like I don't know, like it never feels malicious, even though sometimes it seems like it is. It's I don't
yeah.
know. Yeah, she's a very well either written or acted or both character.
Both. I think it's her execution of her character, like the way she executes is great. But it's also, I think she just has that innate ability as an actor, as a comedian, to make it like even funnier, but also likable. It's almost like, you know, none of the characters are 100% good or bad. They're all so dynamic and their stories and their upbringings relate to how they are, and just like teachers, just like administrators, just like us. And
Sure.
even if you're not a teacher, I feel like you can relate to these characters in your job setting. The overachiever, the one that maybe doesn't take it as seriously, or just each of us have a role in our jobs and maybe not 100% with the characters traits, but I think we can relate to them in some way or another.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they're flawed and they're human and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. And so yeah, it's definitely yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I 1,000% agree. And to your earlier point too, yeah. So yeah, Ava and yeah, Mr. Johnson are just funny and they just
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they do just a great job of elevating their role and I'm sure you know, the actress that plays, you know, Ava Coleman's character, I'm sure because her stand-up background, I'm sure it only like helps her in the role. But as
Yeah.
far as like teacher wise, um I've I think I've grown a softer spot for Melissa as times pass by. Because like, you know, if I had to pick my favorite teacher, it's probably Melissa because I think she's kind of she she's interesting. Like she's like she's not what you expect, right?
Yeah.
She's very proud of her like you know her Italian background, her Italian cooking, and you know she's got that you know stereotypical like Philly don't mess with me kind of thing attitude by it. But at the same time, it's you can tell she's just like a loving person, and she presents her love in such an interesting and unique way, and Similar to Jacob, but in a different way. She's just a very unique teacher. Like every time we get any glimpses of her classrooms, they're just a very different dynamic. She's usually talking. She's never like sometimes she's in front of the board, but most of the time she's like looking down, talking to the students, kind of like very personable, kind of just like building relationships. She knows all her students very well. She knows like to the point that she knows like their personality. She knows what and she teaches all her students differently. So like just to be that thorough, it's just like very, very interesting. And like it's funny how she's like competitive. And so she wants her students to do well and she wants her students to be better than other students, even if they're not even in the same grade level. And it's funny when we have like they've competed over different things like talent show stuff, and they've competed when it comes to like science projects. And it's funny to see that like and it's funny because like she almost gives off the impression that she's like down to earth and relatable and she's more street smart, but like she's an educator. She has a degree, she has a background, and when she wants to flex her smarty pantsness, like she can. And it's funny, there's another teacher that I think he's like a science teacher, he's like a minor character in it. And like he's always trying to befriend the different teachers, and he got really close to befriending like Jacob and Melissa, and it's like no, 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 come on, we were just being nice to you. And it's kind of funny because like the fact that Melissa was able to like even keep up this nerdy science conversation with them, as long as like it's like it shows that she is a smart teacher. Not that she isn't, but like there's sometimes there's this conventional mindset that you have to be quote unquote book smart or say these big like giant words to prove that you're like an intelligent, like eloquent teacher, right? And so I'm a fan that she is just like an outlier, but in a good way. So I'm a
Mhm.
sucker for Melissa for sure.
Yeah, I love her. And she's a tough exterior, but then you get to know her and her heart. And she has that tough love energy with her students, but ultimately she wants what's best for them and she does. Like I love teachers like that because that's the best way to learn is from teachers like that. And I aspire to be like that. I'm not as tough. I can be for sure, but I don't have like that upbringing that she did. And she's that Italian. She just tells it like it is. So I
Sure.
appreciate her. Yeah, I
No,
agree.
no, that's awesome. If you aspire to her to be there one day, I'm sure you will. But it's tricky to have that conviction. And then she's also one of the veterans too, so it's probably also
Mhm.
why she has that conviction too. She hasn't been there as long as Barbara,
Yeah.
but probably the second longest like teacher up. So she knows the ropes and whatnot too. So since we're diving deep into the different teachers, we can go over like the different teaching styles. And for those who are just listening, I'm gonna briefly hit all the topics, like just in case you guys can't see this, because we'll put this on the video feed so you guys can see it on the video. But for those that are listening, I'll actually break down each section for you. So lecturer is more like of a formal authority style, more of just like the easy to prepare lectures, opportunity to teach large groups and whatnot. So kind of more of like your traditional probably PowerPoint style teacher. The other section or the other type of teacher is a demonstrator. Students more an instructor is open to student centered learning, incorporates many teacher formats. They're just demonstrating more, potentially a little bit more hands on, but just making sure the students like engaged and an active participant in whatever they're learning. We have the hybrid, which balances between the instructor and the student centered approach. So someone who's like has the structure of the more traditional style, but is willing to meet like their students on like an independent level and whatnot. And then we have the facilitator, which is more an instructor facility inquiry based learning, which is it's kind of more designed to like they kind of engage with the students more. They expect more of the students. They ask more questions of the students, and they make their students more independent. They make them more like involved in their learning process. And then we have a delegator, which is more of a group style learning process, peer to peer collaborative approach, which they kind of bounce off the students. And this is kind of similar to that role we talked with Melissa, because she's not very traditional. She'll like bounce off the students. And like she'll kind of see what they kind of want to learn, and then kind of, but she still is creative enough where she can still make this into a quote unquote lesson plan, but she jumps off like her students energy and she knows her students, so she already knows like what types of lessons plans are going to be effective for them. So that's a general overview. So now that we kind of gave like a brief overview of the different teaching styles, what are who do you think falls into like each category, Jade?
Yeah, I think Janine is definitely more of the hybrid facilitator. She's very student centered. She always wants to do whatever is new, incorporating new techniques, new ideas. She's very open minded, which is a great quality to have as a teacher. And then you have Barbara, who's more of, I would say, demonstrator slash lecturer. She kind of falls into different categories, but I think primarily the demonstrator lecturer because of her traditional learning background. She's a veteran. She's been doing this the longest. And then you have Gregory, who I would say is more of a delegator lecturer. He's very rigid. He can be all about standard based, like I need to get the standards versus having everyone, I think, master a concept. He just wants to get to the next standard so that they get through all of the content before the end of the year. Then you have Jacob. I think he's more of a facilitator. Like he is student centered. He wants them to be inquiry based, where they ask questions, and he's so animated when he teaches that it's not all about him, it's about the students. Even though he kind of puts on a performance, he always puts it back on the students and makes learning really fun. So I appreciate that style. And then you have Melissa, who, like you said, is a delegator, but also a facilitator because of her authoritative, I would say, presentation. She seems that way, but then she allows more collaboration and whole group instruction. And I think hers is a good balance. Yeah, hers is a good balance. They all have a little bit of everything, I would say.
Sure, right. And then it also depends, like sometimes it's student based too, right? Like there's some students that just don't work well in like a regular, hey, write this what I'm writing on the board, or
Mhm.
copy copy this, or paraphrase this slideshow, right? Everybody learns differently, and you have to
Yeah.
like sometimes.
Adapt to their learning style. Yeah, you have to adapt to their learning style. In the small group settings, that's what they do. They don't show it. They don't show, like you said earlier, they don't show a lesson in its entirety. So you don't get like the nuances of teaching. You don't get, oh, the beginning and then the end and that's it. No, we're constantly reviewing. We have small group instruction. There's so much more to teaching than just one lesson. There's practice that they do daily, depending on the subject. Like math, for example, there's small group instruction. And I think math is a huge one to where veteran teachers know what works. And like I said, Barbara and Melissa, they're really good examples of what to do and how to really adapt to each learning style.
No, absolutely. What category do you think you would fall in? Do you feel like you're more of a lecturer,
Me?
demonstrator,
um,
hybrid, facilitator,
I
delegator?
because I teach online, I used to teach in person, but now I'm online hybrid, but also student centered, like inquiry based. I like to incorporate gate icons when I teach. So gate icons, they're different icons that gifted and talented students focus on for each lesson. So for example, multiple perspectives, a student can have a math problem and I'll show, okay, let's focus on multiple perspectives. Did anybody solve this problem differently? I really like to showcase students' work while I'm teaching, and I let them explain, how did you get that answer? Because maybe it's not the same way I would have, but I embrace that. I love when students have a different way or different method of solving a math problem that I would have solved differently. So I would say I fall under facilitator, hybrid, demonstrator, like a little bit of everything depending on the subject. I also teach history. So history is more of a lecture, whereas math can be more of a facilitator, demonstrator. So I think it also just depends on the subject, but I primarily teach math.
Interesting. Okay. No, no, thank you for your response and your analysis, and it makes sense too, right? In a hybrid setting, you have to be creative to engage students, especially on a younger level, right? And then math is generally it could be a challenging topic, but if you present it in a fun way, if you're engaging them, like you said, like, hey, hey, this kid who's your age also figured it out. So if they could figure it out, theoretically, you could figure it out, right? And it takes away the mystique, right? Because I know sometimes different subjects or topics or regardless sometimes come off intimidating, and I think that's a great idea of having the student break it down, and then it also gives student ownership in their learning and then their ability, and it also empower them when they have the opportunity to meet those students. They can also kind of help their fellow students, which also kind of takes some pressure off of you, and then it also creates like some good habits for that student, right? Because like what if the teacher, and then like for better or for worse, where the kid likes just the spotlight or doesn't like this spotlight, it's still creating like a positive reinforcement for them because they're being recognized too, right? So it's important.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I love to showcase other students and um, praise. Like that's in a lot of schools will do PBIS. It's called PBIS, Positive Behavioral Intervention Support. So for every one negative thing, like for example, so and so is off task, and you tell them once for that one negative comment, you need to supplement or you need to have 5 really positive things to say to kind of balance or to cancel out that one negative, I guess, feedback comment that you have. And so I constantly work on positive praise. Um, Thank you,
No, it's
so and so.
important.
Thank you, so and so, for leaving your camera on. Thank you for following along. And so, because they hear that recognition, they all want it. And so, if they're all following along, they all get it. They all receive that praise, which I know isn't innate. Like it doesn't, they need to believe it. It's not just me saying it, they have to believe it, but it helps when they are being recognized and they're being praised and being complimented every day. So I really try to incorporate that with whatever I'm doing, just thanking them for being on time. The simplest things. Thank you for being on time. Thank you for leaving your camera on. I see you're on this page. Just, I think that sets the tone as a teacher because they're going to reciprocate whatever energy you have. And so you want to come in just really positive and excited and animated, which is all, all the things that require teaching to be engaging. So I really try to do that in
No,
all.
recognition is important. Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I remember being a kid, elementary school, and you got your golden star, dude. That was sometimes some days it was harder to get that golden star, and then you're ranking amongst the other students. It's like, hey, what do you mean I'm in third place? But nah, dude. And then like, but it creates a positive learning of, yeah, it's competitive, yeah, but it's everyone's helping each other out.
Yeah.
And that no, it's beautiful. That I'm happy that you make it like an immersive experience. And we touched a little bit on it earlier, but since you're talking about your lessons plans and whatnot, and the way you teach and your different types of like teaching styles to cater different learning styles, what what are some of the mystique? Because you talked about it earlier with Janine and different characters that like there's the dream and there's like the reality, right? So
Yeah.
could you tell a little bit about your experience, right? About like your journey to become a teacher,
Yeah.
why you wanted to become a teacher, and how you said you kind of related to Janine. And then what are some like maybe some misconceptions that people don't realize about teachers?
Yeah. So I was brought up with educators. So my mom is a teacher. My dad is a teacher. My dad was an administrator. So education has always been the foundation of my upbringing in a way that's, it's not like you need to be this way. It was demonstrated to us. So we're big advocates for modeling. So it's not what you say, it's how you model to your kids, even as a teacher. So to me, my parents were the models of why education is important. Growing up in San Bernardino, they further educated themselves, and I think they wanted better for us than what they had. And so I think seeing that not just inspired me to become a teacher, but I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. So if you were to ask me, I even have like a kindergarten drawing of I'm going to be a singer and a teacher. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And maybe it was the whole nature versus nurture. Maybe it was a combination, just seeing them and then me having that desire internally. But I think seeing that, I knew I want to become a teacher, and I love children. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so going to school to become that was a goal of mine. And then getting into the teacher field, right? So going to school is one thing. You have this idealistic view of the way teaching is going to be. I'm going to be this type of teacher and it's going to be great. And you just have no idea what you're in for. And then reality sets once you get your teaching job and you're in the field, it's totally different. And it's school doesn't prepare you for it. They really don't. Like you can have the context of what to teach, how to teach, somewhat how to teach. But then once you're in there, you have students that have so many different levels, teaching styles. They come from different backgrounds, different homes. A lot of it is beyond your control. So you can only do what you can do with the time you're given and with the resources you're given. And like Janine does, she goes above and beyond. And I used to do that. I used to work past my teaching hours on the weekends. I was so dedicated. And then I burnt out and then I had a baby. And so because of that, it really shifted my perspective on how I'm going to show up for my students so that I don't burn out, because I have to have some balance in my life. It does no good to show up exhausted and then you become bitter and angry and resentful and you become that teacher that you see on those movies, those stereotypical movies of what a teacher is. Those teachers exist because they're burnt out, because they feel so, I would say, angry, bitter, but also they don't feel recognized. Like they don't feel like they have been given the praise and recognition that they have put into this field. And then teacher turnover rate is high, especially in like the special education field. These teachers are just going into it, I think, ill prepared, and then reality sets and you have to choose, how am I going to balance this with my life? Because we all have personal lives. And teaching is not just, I know, believe it or not, teaching is not our only job. We have other things in our lives going on. And so I think the human, I think capabilities are limited. Like we are limited in what we can do. And we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with, I did the best I could, and then leave it at that. And then the next day show up and do it all over again.
No, that's true. That's it's very well said. And like when teachers aren't feeling like appreciated or they don't have that self-love, and they probably don't mean to not have that self-love, right? But teachers aren't just teachers, right? Like to your point, you were as you had your burnout, you were a mom, right? And the teachers on the show and teachers that we know in the real world are moms too, right? And sometimes their day doesn't end at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. They have to stay later. Some students' parents aren't punctual, and you have to make sure the last kid gets picked up, and you're like waiting forever. And then you have to get your lessons planned. And then you have to work on dinner, and then you have to make sure everything's ready for the next day. And then that's an endless that's your 9 to 5, that's your Monday through Friday. But to your earlier point, sometimes it trickles into Saturday and stuff. And then sometimes you're heartbroken as a teacher, right? Because it's like, man, the kid's not getting it, right? And then sometimes you feel powerless, and sometimes there's nothing you can do, even if you want to give the kid the world, right? Sometimes it doesn't say anything about you. It might be something else going on, like you said as well. They might have things going on at home. They might have different pressures, different maybe psychological elements that need to be like addressed and haven't been addressed, depending on like school funding. Does school have a psychologist? Are they unaware? Or maybe, or is it something else in the environment that's creating these issues? Is it because of like socioeconomic classes? There's like so many different layers that affect these students. And no, thank you for being honest and vulnerable about your story. And I also find it interesting that you said that your parents are teachers, because I know the founder of this show, the writer of the show, Kinzer Brunson, her mom was also a teacher, and like she wrote this show as a love letter to her mom, because teachers aren't appreciated, right? They don't get the flowers that they do deserve because of everything that they do, because they essentially mold the future leaders, researchers, and career professionals of tomorrow, right? And yeah, they deserve a lot of love. And they also mold the serial killers too. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure serial killers are
Oh
the.
God, no!
I
Please no.
just, I'm just kidding. That's just a bad joke. No, they already had other psychological things going on. Just a bad
Yeah,
joke. An
yeah.
easy
Don't blame
joke.
the teachers, no.
I'm just kidding.
No, I agree with that. I think uh, just growing up, seeing my mom in education, my parents in education, uh, just from not just a student, but as a child, right? You get a different perspective on a teacher and what it entails. And so I want to do that, even though I knew it was so hard. I knew it was hard. People, we don't do it for the money, believe it or not. We don't do it for the money. We do it because it fulfills us and it really allows us to give, like I said already, I know I've already mentioned this, but to serve our community and to give back to our youth in ways that a lot of us didn't have. It might have been a teacher that inspired us. It might have been a subject that we want to teach. It could be anything, I think, that sparks interest for teachers to want to become educators themselves and further that. So I think it just pays homage to, if it was to her mom, but to all the teachers out there that really have inspired their students. And I think all of us has that one teacher that did that for us. And I think this show does that, just with every episode.
Absolutely, yeah. I like to think we all had one teacher that impacted us in some positive way. And maybe it's not your favorite teacher, maybe whatever, but even if it's like some kind of small interaction, a moment, yeah. Because yeah, you know what I mean. We're depending on what part of the country and where you are from viewing this, like because I know every country is different. Some people are only school for 10 years, 12, 13, 9, and some kids are smarty pants and they finish everything in like 8 years or something. So I know every journey is different, but regardless, I like to think there's some individuals, some maybe it wasn't even a teacher. Maybe it's like you had a cool cafeteria person. I know I had a cool janitor in elementary school. That guy was freaking cool, man. Like, because he was like, you could tell that he was like a person that could have been an athlete in their background because he was tall. He was like 6'4", athletic, tall, like a white dude, but he was super nice, super engaging, and he was just good at everything. So like when we played basketball, like he would like dunk like easy. When he was like any kind of other sport, he would like freaking hit these home runs one handed. I don't even know how you do that. Like he was awesome. And so when we had like these different like student versus teachers, it was so cool when sometimes he'd be on the student side because we get decimated. We're students, we're little, and like for us to do all the things that like the teachers had to do, be like, don't he? We were excited.
It's
Yeah, I
funny you
still
say
remember.
that. It's funny you say it because my janitor at my middle school was, I don't know any janitor. It's kind of like in this show, but he was very inspiring. Like, Jade, you need to sing. Like, he would hear me sing, and I had this solo this one time,
Aw.
and he never forgot it. And he would call me by my solo name, and yeah, because it went. Oh, do Lord, oh, do Lord. That was the chorus. Oh, do you remember me? That's how it went, right? And so because of that, he called me Adu. So he would say, "Hey, Adu. Hey, Adu, like you need to do something. Hey, Adu." And so when you
Oh,
said janitor, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just remembered him." And I don't know what happened to him. Aren't you ever curious, like, of your teachers?
absolutely,
Like,
absolutely.
what
Because
happened to that
and
person?
if you do the math, they're not here anymore, right? Because if they're in their 30s, 30 years, maybe they are alive. Maybe I shouldn't be killing anybody, but either older-ish or they're still alive. But no, it's a good point. You're like, yeah, positive impact on your life. Yeah, no. And look, see, guys, you get all kinds of things on AZ Ray videos and interviews. We got a nice, amazing solo with some acapella from Jay. So
That was
thank you.
impromptu. I didn't know that was going to come out. I have
Dude,
not warmed up,
no
so I
rehearsal or
apologize.
nothing. She just boom, just like that, guys. Only here, only you get. Yeah, if you like that, give a thumbs up to the video, please, please. Come on, you can you can't get performances like that from anywhere. From a beautiful. Was it soprano or what's your vocal range?
I'm an alto. I'm an
Oh,
alto.
okay.
Second soprano. Second soprano, alto. Yeah.
Okay, okay, there you go. Alto, come on. Only here, AZ Ray videos. So thank you again, Jade. But no, and then when you said that, well, how you remembered your janitor, now I'm remembering like this super cool lunch lady that like kind of always had my back. Cause like, and I don't even know why. She was just so cool with me sometimes. Like sometimes she'd give me some like secret food that like if it was like pizza for the day, sometimes she'd be like, "Hey, do you want a cheeseburger?" And I'm like, is no one else seeing this? And then she'd like hook me up. And then, but now that I think about it, she might have been a volunteer because sometimes she would also like watch us during recess and stuff. And like I get picked on a lot, growing up in the 90s, different like racial background. And like, I was a brown kid. I also had a little bit of like a leg walking disability. I like was really badly like pigeon toed. I had like some sciatica, some kind of like polio. I was never properly diagnosed because we didn't have the money to. I had to get Forrest Gump braces, but shoot, come on, Latinos, Mexicans, we don't got money for that. I had to pay like $13,000, and that's in the 90s. That's
Did
like,
you wait? Did you really have to wear those on your legs?
well, we didn't have the money for it. So we dropping 30K for that? Nah, dude, we don't got a mom that's willing to sleep with the director. Sorry for that. But that's the plot of the movie. I'm not sorry, guys. Don't flag this YouTube, but I'm just talking about I'm talking about the plot of Forrest Gump. So nah, man, there's no way we could afford that. So no, yeah, yeah. So like, I was picked on a lot, but like I was a good reverse bully. People would bully me, but I would end up kicking their butt. And so I got to actually suspended a lot, but not because I started the fights, because they'd pick me and I'd beat them up. And sometimes, that lunch lady slash PTA, I don't know what that, I don't even know what you call those people anymore. It's like those people that like watch the kids at recess. I don't know. The people that are just like, hey, don't do that, kid. And they yell at you. But she had my back. She caught me out of not getting suspended one time. Like, no, he didn't even start it. Like, no, there were three kids going after it. And yeah, and then he was able to push the three kids off. And I'm not trying to sell myself as this badass. The point of the story is that cafeteria lady was cool. And I'm trying to think, man. Oh,
She
dude,
just
I
had an
remember. Huh?
impact on you. Yeah, she had an impact.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Dude, there was this librarian lady too. I remember there was like a period where it was kind of hard for me to like to make friends and stuff. And like I had like my different Latino friends, but I didn't have classes with them. And so like my classes, I usually ended up with people from different backgrounds of more of like Asian, Indian, and some white kids and stuff too. And like I try to be friends with them, but they didn't like me for whatever reason. So sometimes like when it came to like recess or like lunch, I would just like stay in the library and be a little bit of a nerd. And like, dude, like I don't know if my librarian was really cool or like we just vibed. I don't know what it was, but dude, I loved seeing her. Like she made my day. And like she'd always give me a little book recommendation. She was very interested in what I was doing. And like she would like nerd out with me. She would keep up. But then now that I look back, I'm like, dude, did she read these kid books too? How is she keeping up with me with like the characters and like how did she or maybe she's just a good listener and she had context clues and could figure it out. I don't know. But to this day, I think it's magic. And I'm just kidding. But I don't know. Or she probably read the back, or I don't know. Well, I wasn't paying attention. I don't know. But yeah, it's when you have facilitators or faculty members or different teachers that make an impact on your life. It's important. It's powerful, and yeah, and I'm happy that we're talking about this. But yeah, yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I got a little bit on a nostalgia trip for a second, but
No,
yeah,
I think everyone has that person that they've encountered, like you said,
I like to
in
think
their
so. I like
schooling.
to think so too. And since we're talking about encounters and impressions, Um, do any of the teachers or maybe Ava Coleman, the principal, or the janitor, or anybody else, do they remind you of anybody that you've either worked with or like encountered through your own experiences or anything like that?
I think I've had really good principals. I've had administrators that maybe weren't as what's the word I want to use? Supportive.
Good word,
Yeah,
good
I
word.
think I think yeah, probably one of my administrators after having a baby, I struggled. I thought, okay, 3 months, I'll have this pop this baby out and go back to work, right? It doesn't work like that. And so I was transferred to a school it's called interdistrict transfer while I was on maternity leave and I didn't even know. And the new principal just I mean, I know I was going through it and I was really struggling, and I mentioned that to her. I'm not ready to come back. I'm actually not doing well. I'm having postpartum. I'm going to have to take more time off. And so I was on disability, and she was not very kind to me. She kind of responded, well, I'm going to write you up. And I'm thinking, I just had a baby. What do you mean you're going to write me up? So she tried to, I guess, write me up and send me to, I don't know what exactly, try to reprimand me basically. And of course, because of my union and because we're a teacher, I was protected, but it went as far as like calling the union, having them to get involved. And I had just had a baby, and to know that a woman was like that, who is also a mom of many children, not just one. I had just had my first. There was no empathy, and she didn't show me any grace or kindness. And I'm thinking, okay, we have administrators like that. They're so out of touch, but also they forget what it's like to be a teacher or a first time mom, or just the struggles that come with personal lives, right? And how it can impede your teaching. And so you need time, or you need extended maternity leave, or whatever your situation is. But that really drove me to put things into perspective, like, oh, I'm just a number. I'm not, I need to put myself first. I need to put my family first and my child first. So because of that, I was able to go on disability, because I qualified. So I was on disability for some time, and I got to spend time with my baby until I was ready to go back. And then I chose to find an online teaching job, and not go back to in person. And I think eventually, maybe one day, I'll go back when my child's a little bit older. But that administrator, and so many, that's just one of many, but I've had some really unkind administrators. But I'm glad that I experienced that, because you're not always, it's like life. You're not always going to get the nicest bosses. You're not always going to get the support and kindness and empathy that you deserve. And what are you going to do about that? Like, how are you going to handle yourself? Because you can't control that. You can't control factors that are outside or beyond yourself. You can only control how you respond to them. And so I'm proud of myself for, I think, handling it well. And then also, what am I going to do for the next time? Because it's going to happen again. I'm sure, but now I know, I think, how to conduct myself and just to be professional in this field, and not let your emotions, because they can not let your emotions get the best of you, but also being, I think, level headed is hard to do sometimes in this field. Whereas, like, there's that we're in a time where social media can make or break your career in whatever field, but especially teachers. There's like a microscope on us, and a child can take out a phone and record us. And I don't know any other profession. Maybe I'm thinking, maybe as a doctor, or I don't really know any other profession, maybe as a police officer, but just a profession that can really, it can change your life, like make or break your career if a child pulls out a phone in the classroom. I know we're kind of going on a tangent, but I'm just saying that because of, I think, the responsibility and the level of intensity that teachers face every day is my point. I'm bringing
No,
that
yeah,
up.
no, I understand. And then, you're essentially saying that in many ways you had your own Ava Coleman experience, and unfortunately she wasn't funny and charming and didn't appreciate your situation. And
No.
to your second point, I get it too, that aside from having the regular pressures and stresses already being a teacher, you also have the stresses that, at any time, a kid could have a potential like grenade or landmine, like, oh, I'm gonna film you today or
Yes.
whatever. And then it's just, yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, to your point, yeah, police go through a similar dynamic, but it's not very likely that a kid is gonna film a cop, maybe, but that's just more about the neighborhood and the whole need for the cop even being there. But either way, the point is still understood, that it's still it's still like a stressful situation. But I know we've kind of gotten pretty well rounded with the different types of like experiences as a teacher and as an observer, and watching the show. And I know we've talked about some of the the challenges, but what do you think some of the rewards are? Because I'm sure the reason why you're still doing it is because of the rewards and the satisfaction and the joy you get from your students. So what are some of the reasons why you're probably still at it, and what are the things that you just love about teaching?
I think the relationships you build, I think all teachers can say that, with families, with students. And then every year you build this community, this little family, and hearing them say, I understand or I get it. Like that's like music to our ears, right? And then parents who trust you, you have to build that. You have to earn their trust. Same thing with a child, and prove that I'm here for you. I'm not here for the paycheck. I'm here because there are some teachers, it happens, but I'm here really for the betterment of your education. I want to help you. I want to guide you. I want to facilitate your learning, but I also care about you and I want to know how you're doing. I want to make sure you're okay. So I think just the connections, the relationships we build, and then the growth, like we want to be there to help them grow in whatever area we teach, whatever field we're teaching in. And then the other reason I would say is because for me, having that community with the student at the end of the year, every single year I cry. Like I'm always like, oh my gosh, a new set of students. No, I love my old students. And then I get my new students. And at the end of the year, I'm sad. I'm going to miss them. It happens every single year. I don't cry as much as I used to my first year. Like my first year, I would bawl my eyes out like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm going to miss so-and-so. I'm going to miss that person. And I would get really sad. But now it's like, okay, a new opportunity for new students, new set of students, new set of minds. And they're all different. Every classroom you get, every class size, the new year is always different. Like no 2 years are the same as a teacher. You're always going to get teaching is full of surprises. Definitely.
No, definitely. Yeah, very well said. I remember when I was teaching at different learning communities for my university, like I was very emotional after like my first group of students. And then I had my other group, and I'm not saying they weren't as important or as valuable, but there was something special that happened within my first class that I think it's kind of hard to like duplicate, but I think it's probably me romanticizing it. But I don't know. It is hard for me even put to words. Like, were they more engaged? Was I more engaged because it was my first class? I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
And then yeah, so I definitely know what you mean. And then like because we touched on it earlier, right? You kind of formed that like maternal paternal parent bonding with them, and it's like it's almost like you get empty nest syndrome. It's like, oh no, my birdies are flying away.
Yeah.
It's more of a compliment because theoretically, if you keep all your students, it means you kind of sucked, right?
Yeah, you don't want them to get held back. No.
Right. So it's like it's bittersweet, but it's rewarding, right? And to go through empty nest syndrome every year, I'm sure it's healthy on some level, but at the same time, it's still sad, right? It's still those different things. But you touched on it as well earlier slightly. Um, what are some other challenges aside from just like the students like socioeconomic backgrounds and all those different things? Like how much does like do districts and budgets and federal state mandates and like sometimes you have like state testing, how does that like play a role for like what you have to do like as an educator? And I know on the Abbott show they've talked about it, the pressure of passing different tests, and most of the time those scores on those tests affect the funding and stuff and like the school's reputation and the school's ranking, right? And I know I assume you've been keeping up with the show, right?
So I haven't been keeping up with it as much. I have a toddler, so she's 3, and
Sure.
we don't watch TV as much. So
Yeah, sure, you're
sometimes I
watching
just want to
whatever
go
she
to,
wants. Okay.
yeah, or we don't watch TV. Like I don't allow her really to do much screen time. But
That's
so
good.
yeah,
Too
to answer
young.
your question, yeah, I try not to. I try not to. Uh, to answer your question, yeah, I'm mostly on the second season, so I haven't gotten to the third and fourth season, which
Oh, okay. Well,
I want. I
without
think that's my
spoiling,
goal. That's my goal
sure.
this time.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we can even do like a recap and like catch you up once you're caught up too. Okay. So without spoiling too much, it's not. I'm not really spoiling too much, but just
Mhm.
because we're talking about like the district and state and federal
Yeah.
mandate. That's all I was gonna like touch on that. Like
Yes.
just like in any school, you eventually in later seasons you start seeing the involvement of the district more and like a little bit
Mhm.
more of the state and federal mandates, just like any school. So that's
Right.
what I was asking you. So yeah,
Yes.
good thing I stopped myself. I was about to give you like a spoiler, dude.
No, it's
Not
okay.
really.
So
I wasn't going to. But
no, relating to that, so with funding, it just depends. So the districts that so funding comes from state taxes. So if you live in an area where the state taxes, they're nice homes, you're going to get more funding naturally versus you're coming from a district with homes that are surrounded by lower socioeconomic status. um, the funding may not be as much. That's kind of over generalized, but really it depends on the funding. So based on where you live, that determines the funding you'll get for that school. Well, the way state testing works is, of course, states they want to look at those scores, and those that do well sometimes do receive more funding. But it's almost you're at a disadvantage if you're coming from those schools that don't get the funding to begin with, because some districts will give out the funding at the beginning of the year. Some districts will give it out quarterly or three times a year, a third of the year though for so it just depends. Every district is different in the way that they're funded and how often they are receiving those funds. So to kind of answer your question, the socioeconomic students that are at a disadvantage are not going to get as much funding based on where they live. But that's not to say they can't. It just, like I said, every school, every district is different. And the bigger districts usually get more funding. The bigger, right,
sure,
they live in a bigger area, more community, more
sure.
property taxes, more homes. Yeah, the borders are a lot more vast, a lot wider than the smaller ones. So there's that. And then I think for a teacher, as state testing, the pressures that come from that, it can be a lot because there's some schools that they do practice state testing every week. Some schools will do practice state testing just right before state testing. So it just depends on administration, like the principal at this school. So some administrators want them to practice all year round for state testing so that when spring comes, they're ready. Other schools will say, well, wait till January, wait till February, wait till March, wait till right before testing, and then you can practice. So it just depends. And then there's different types of tests. So you can assess students using at the beginning of the year different programs, like there's STAR, there's IXL, there's iReady. There's so many different assessments to assess students and their levels, but every district, every school is different in the way that they use their um, program and what program they use.
Thank you. No, thank you for breaking it down and clarifying. No, that makes sense. And I think sometimes schools will give out like different like maybe scholarship or merit based things depending on certain efforts, like from like science fair, like very individual based. So I guess like students from poorer socioeconomic backgrounds do have some opportunities, but they're like far in between compared to the ones that are going to traditionally get funding. And no, that makes sense. And thanks for clarifying. And I know we talked about this earlier, but through like I talked about a little bit of my background and because I grew up in a different like more like racial times of like the 90s, and I used to get in trouble for like speaking Spanish in school. And we even talked about this before too, that like I was ESL and I had enough of an IQ and a GPA to do gate, but because I was ESL, they didn't let me. They're like, "Oh no, you're ESL, so you can't." And I'm like, "What?" I think I finally was allowed to test out of ESL in junior high. Like I wasn't even given the opportunity to test out sooner. And it's funny because I know we talked about it as well, that like that whole stigma's kind of changed, the paradigm's kind of shift, and now you're saying there's something called like dual immersion or something. I think I've also heard like emergent bilinguals. I know I've heard different terms, but it's definitely more open to it. So just to touch on like the ESL or the dual immersion thing, is there Is there some practices that you do like that are changing now in the shift paradigm? Is there some things that were done before that you think are more effective? What are your thoughts on all those different things as not necessarily because of the teaching style, sometimes it's put on the district. So what are your thoughts on the different progression in the whole I guess teaching profession?
Yeah, I think that can be dangerous, and I say that word because when a student is bilingual, they tend to want to put them in ESL, which I don't think is actually fair to them. So I know some parents that won't even put that their child is bilingual because they don't want their child to be placed in the ESL program because of the stigma, and also they feel like their child's at a disadvantage, especially in the 90s. Like, you had those students that were only taught in their language and then they weren't taught English, and you saw how it affected them. Now we're getting to dual immersion, to where you'll learn both languages, primarily English, but then you'll get Spanish. Whereas, like I said, every district's different, every program's different. Some are taught in their primary language, but then English is also taught. Dual immersion is most common, so they teach both. But for that, I think we're definitely improving in that area. There's not as much stigma. But once you're labeled as ESL, it's difficult to, like you said, some students don't test out until middle school. So they're having these additional supports, which in theory should support them, but it can hinder their abilities. And because of the label, they're placed in these extra classes. And so their focus they're not able to focus on the general education classes because they're in these other additional ESL classes. Every school's different, every program's different, but I know it can be really difficult because they have to test out of it, and that can take years because there's levels, right? There's levels to get to proficiency in English, and it can take a while for a child to test out of it. And I know lots of parents that are angry because they felt their child was labeled something or put in a program that they didn't agree with. And ultimately, it's the parents' right, and they get to decide, but they're not always privy to that information. They don't always know that, and they don't always advocate for themselves and for their child because they don't know. They don't know that they can.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, my frustrations with ESL is that they made me feel like I was in like a slow class. When it's like, dude, I understand English. I understand Spanish. I just come from a home where they mostly speak Spanish.
Yeah.
My aunts and uncles and older siblings that were born in Mexico, like we speak Spanish, but it doesn't mean
Mhm.
I don't know what you're saying. And so yeah, that was a little frustrating. And then it sucked too, like in junior high, because like I didn't get to I wasn't able to take elective classes because I was in ESL. So then I finally tested out of it, and I finally took on my last semester of junior high. I was finally able to like take woodshop, but I'm like, dude, like why was I almost felt punished. And
Yeah.
the thing is too is that I even remember I can't remember the name of the test. It wasn't an SAT or something, but it was something similar in junior high. I remember taking that test, and that English test was easier than the ESL test. So I'm like, dude, that's bullspit, man. Because they asked because like there was the written part, there was like the verbal part, and I tested high in those. But the last thing is that you have to like write a survey. I mean, not a survey, a summary, like an essay.
An essay.
Sorry,
Mhm.
my archaeology terms are coming out. What am I saying? Survey. What am I saying? No, yeah, like yeah, I had to write an essay, but like the prompt was so vague, and it wasn't helpful. I can't remember what the prompt was, but it was just like it was so vague. It was like a sentence, like I don't know, write something about your life and stuff, and I'm like it's like frustrating because they don't tell you like, hey, do you want it in first person? You want it in third person? Do I have to cite some sources for my thoughts and blah blah? All these things that you start to learn in junior high or middle school, depending on like the school system that you have. And I was just like, dude. And I remember I took it 2 or 3 times. I can't remember, but I remember like the first 2 times that I passed, like I was off by point 0.5, and I know the teacher can also decide if they want to pass you or not. So they didn't pass me twice, and I'm just like, oh. And I could tell the teacher was low key out to get me. because like I didn't have the greatest relationship with my ESL teacher in middle school. I'm just like, ugh. Even one of my best friends growing up had like a stigma. Dude, he hated her so badly that he even his senior quote was kind of like an "fu" to her. That's how bad of a teacher she was. Because she was like Melissa from Abbott Elementary, but in a bad way. Like she was just like a uh, she was just a jerk, you know? Like she thinks that she was giving us tough love, but it's like, dude, you're not even like no, recognizing our gifts and recognizing and yeah. Trying to remember what my friend's senior quote was. He's like, I did it because I said you couldn't. And I don't know, something that's so passive aggressive. It was like, I did it because yeah, I did it because you said I couldn't do it and I achieved, like, no thanks to you, something like that. It was like so bad. And he thought it was the coolest senior quote. I'm pretty sure to this day, if he looks at his freaking yearbook, he's like, yeah, that's a screw to her, you know? But like, yeah, that just some
And
of my
just hearing that, like, I'm trying to remember if there was a teacher that was so unkind to me. I don't think so, but I could have blocked it out. Who knows? But I do know in middle school, right? Because I was in choir in middle school, I struggled with math and they put me in math support. So I was removed from choir and I was put in math support. And that was the first time because growing up, I was in GATE, right? I went to a school where you had to test into and you had to maintain your grades. You had to get A's and C's, nothing more. If you got less than an A and C, you got kicked out of the school. And so middle school, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling. Like this is difficult. And my parents would tell me all the time, like, yeah, you struggled. But I didn't know it as much. Like it wasn't apparent to me until middle school when they took me out of choir and put me in math support. And I was like, I don't belong here, even though I did belong there. I needed help. I was so angry because they took me out of my elective. And in hindsight, it's like children shouldn't be taken out of their electives. They could still love music, choir, sports, and get support. You don't have to take them out of their elective or what they love or a class that they deserve to be in because they're struggling in one area. And I remember being so angry, like, no, I'm going to test out of this. I'm going to get out of it. And I did, but I needed that class. Like that was a class I needed. If I didn't get in that class, I probably would have failed and got kicked out of that school. So it was a good thing in theory, in hindsight, but I think there's so much more we can do to improve so that children don't have that taken that elective, that hobby, that sport, that passion, whatever they have, that shouldn't be removed from their classes.
that's very well said. Yeah, I've had some. Yeah, now that you now you brought up math teachers, I have a lot of negative experience with math teachers. Because for
Really?
better or for worse, maybe they like teaching, but their like execution of how they taught was either boring, or is it maybe because you're like getting into puberty, things are becoming more boring. You're too cool for math because everyone hates math.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I never like failed or had to take anything like that. But like I remember like I think I got an F like on a test. And like I remember that like kind of like, irked me a little bit. And I remember too that like that teacher was like kind of like he was kind of funny, but he was kind of a passive aggressive jerk. It's like, all right. And then like, since he was a white dude, he couldn't say like my name and he couldn't say my last name. So he'd see like Abadako, or he would say like all these weird things, right? And what he would say if we got a question wrong in class or if we did something wrong, be like, all right, whatever. If you want to flip burgers at McDonald's for the rest of your life, that's fine. But if you want to, and dude, he's saying that's like middle school kids. But I
God.
remember that like almost like similar to you, it kind of lit a fire in my butt. I'm like, what do you mean I got an F in this? I'm like, no, man. Like I even used it as like motivation to like even do better. And I even remember in high school, I also had a similar experience because I kind of struggled in another one of my math classes. And I was able to pass. I got a C, but it was hard, man. I had to like fight for that F and C. And like, I remember even to overachieve, I'm like, you know what? Nerd alert. I went to summer school to take a higher math so I can get a higher math to go into a better college. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do that, even that. and then like just to overachieve, you know. And but then again, I've always been nerdy. I've always liked school, so that's I'm a little biased when it comes to that too. But yeah, it's funny. We have interesting similar experience when it comes to math. But
Yeah, well, I think a child can, they can be resilient, right? They can prove that teacher wrong, or that comment can have a lasting effect on a child to where they believe it, even though it's not true. Like that's the responsibility as a teacher. What is it? What is that quote? With great power
power comes great
comes great
responsibility.
responsibility. Thank you,
Yeah,
Arturo.
Uncle Ben. Yeah,
Thank
pardon.
you. So with that, we have the power to really affect a child and their, it's called their mindset, but it's either a growth mindset where you know I'm capable, I'm worthy, I can do this, or a fixed mindset where you are so negative, I can't, like all those words you don't want to tell yourself, I can't do this, I can't do that. Like we can influence our students in that way. And so thank goodness we have that ability, but not all children do. And I don't want any child to have to suffer the same way. But unfortunately, because of other factors, some, I think, fall to believe that and think that that's true. And how sad and how terrible that there's teachers out there that continue to do that and have done that in the past. I think to their students. I haven't encountered it. I was really lucky, and I will keep saying this. I was very fortunate to have really good educators. I went to really good schools, but that's not always the case. And I didn't realize it until I was older that I was privileged. Like that word to me meant something different, but it happens in school too. Like it's a privilege to have a good school with good teachers. And
No, yeah,
I didn't
nurturing.
know. I didn't know that I was privileged. I really didn't until I got older.
Well, and then that's a privilege in itself. No, I had a lot of horror stories. That's a whole that's its own episode, you know. Drama teachers, you know, but we're not here to we're trying to show love to our teachers in this episode. And yeah, we're being a little honest with some different stories, but you know, it happens too, right? Nobody's perfect, and maybe the teachers are going through some kind of divorce, some kind of personal drama, some kind of like midlife crisis. You know, they're humans too. And even the best teachers can, you know, maybe you caught them at a bad time, or just maybe they didn't even enjoy teaching. Maybe they're teaching because all the other options didn't work out for them. And maybe they felt unfulfilled and like teaching was their last resort, and all kinds
Yeah.
of different things. Right. And then, um, and another thing too, that, you know, that your comment reminded me of, and like the whole thing with all these different teachers, is that um like it reminded me of my parents, you know, like I told you, or like I said earlier in this conversation, that you know, I don't come from much. My family comes from like a very poor town in Irapuato, Guanajuato, Mexico. And like, you know, they struggled. You know, my mom only went to first grade, and my dad only went to fifth grade. And one of the reasons why my dad went out of school was kind of like that stereotypical example where he was kind of made to feel dumb, even though he's never dumb. My dad's a bright guy. And I'm sure you've met other people that maybe have similar experiences, whether it's, you know, through our, you know, similar ethnic, you know, Latino, Mexican, Abya, indigenous background, or other people of color. You know, sometimes they're told they're dumb and they believe it, right? You've seen it in movies. I think a very common stereotype you see too in different, like, you know, mobster and like mafia films. They kind of always talk about this, like, you know, I'm a schmuck, you know, I'm a little dumb, you know, you know, but it's like, but dude, like, it's not true. Like, I genuinely believe that there's no dumb people in this world. Everyone has their own gifts and skills,
No,
and
I'm
just
just kidding.
because, wait, what?
I said, I'm just kidding.
Ugh. They're just a little, it just takes them a
Continue.
little bit longer to get to the finish line, Jay. They're not dumb. They're just a
Yeah.
little distracted, or
No, I get
that's
you.
funny.
I'm just
Uh,
kidding. I swear I'm kidding.
yeah, it's not a race, Jay. Gosh, everyone has their own time, okay? Just because you get your GED when you're 58, it doesn't mean that you couldn't have gotten it sooner, right?
It's
But
never
no,
too late. Never
yeah.
too late.
But sometimes, like, don't, like, stop. Don't try. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it's there's more. No, honestly though, like, to even go dive deeper, right? I know you made it into a joke, but um like to be real with it too, to kind of give your joke some justification. We are who we think we are, right? Through different things that I've learned through my own therapy and like different psychological research as a nerd, um, our lives end up being like a tape recording of what people tell us about ourselves. And
Yeah.
sometimes we play a record and we're replaying things of what people tell us who we are. And it's not always true, right? They're repeating their stories that they're putting onto us, right? And similar to people and bad teachers that give those negative experience to students and say like you're dumb, you're not good enough, you're not going to apply to anything, you're going to flip burgers at McDonald's and things like that. Even though I don't know if that joke works anymore, dude. Now they make like
Yeah.
$25 a
Now
day.
I'm like, that sounds like a good gig. Okay. They're making more than minimum wage.
Yeah, back in the day that was an insult. Now it's like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, either way, like it's there's nuance to it, and sometimes like we can become self-defeating, and we think are we limited ourselves, and like we say that we can't, and yeah, maybe for some people some things are harder than others, but it's not impossible,
Mhm.
and yeah, but I
I
get
just
it too.
yeah, when you talked about your family, so your parents, like my mom came here from Mexico. My grandparents came here. My mom was 4 when she came from Mexico, and they put her in Catholic school. So she had an accent and she was different. She spoke with an accent, and they were very cruel to her, and they would hit her and do things, I think, now that are illegal, number one, but also the discrimination she faced and my family and my grandparents faced. To know that my mom was able to persevere through that. She had no choice. She was the oldest. She was a translator for her family. My grandparents didn't speak English. Later on, they learned, but the role that she carried as a young child, having to, I think, really just be the leader of the family in a lot of ways, is inspiring to me, because my grandparents came here to start a new life, and they did that, and then some, because there's so many of us. Mexicans, we procreate like crazy, so there's so many of us, and now I have so much family, and it started from my grandparents, and they could have stayed in Mexico, but they chose to start a family here, and it's so beautiful when I think about it. And I don't want to get emotional because I just lost my grandma in January, but they are. She would always tell me, like, we're the roots and you guys are the branches, and you're going to keep growing. And I think their story is not uncommon. It's everywhere, and so we want, as minorities or people that come here, to better their lives. It's for their family, for more opportunities, for growth, and also for their children to have more than what they had. And I think that's, the cycle, right? It just keeps repeating itself. We want the next generation to be better and be better. And I am so mindful of that. I'll never forget where I came from. I'll never forget my grandparents' sacrifices. And I think that's another reason to where I'm like, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to succumb to any challenges that I face because of how hard they worked. This is nothing compared to what they went through. I can't even imagine. My mind can't even fathom all of the challenges they faced that they didn't even tell us about, that I'm
Absolutely,
sure are just like traumatizing to us, right? I
absolutely,
can't imagine.
absolutely. And to go to your previous comment too, it's probably why, on some level, although I'm not no one saying you're not as hardworking as they are, but the privilege comment too, right? It's almost
Yes.
like they took the slashes and the beatings that you didn't have to take,
Yes.
and that's the beauty and the power of an immigrant background and having that connection. And tying it back to Abbott Elementary, some people have that immigrant connection, but unfortunately most people from like the African American or Afro diaspora, they have the disconnection because of the dark history connected to slavery and things like that. And so there is this big disconnect, and sometimes the culture is seen as lesser and it's not given that same type of love. And when you have these good educators in the show in their own way trying to maintain and foster and empower them to even have love in their community, even if the community doesn't always love them back, right? Because Philly isn't the perfect city, right? It has its slums, it has its wealth, but it has at the same time it has like big teams of recognition. It was the original capital of the United States, so it has like a big foundation to it, you know. And so there's a lot of history in that place, for better or for worse. So it's good to like empower the community and things like that. And I think overall it's like a beautiful message. And that's beautiful that you don't forget your roots. And like likewise, I don't forget mine either. Like I always remember that sacrifice, right? And although I have a bittersweet relationship of this country, of being you know, brought up American, you know, like consider myself more Mexican, I still value and appreciate the opportunity and the fact that I'm here and I'm going to make it count, you know, even if I don't want to at times. Not saying because like I'm a quitter or anything, but it's just because like I said, I have a complex relationship with this place. But it's like I feel like you and I had to share that, like we get the mission, you know what I mean? Like, all right, we're
Like
trying
they
to do
pass the baton and don't drop
yeah,
it.
all
Like
right,
pass
let's
the ball.
go.
Yeah.
We're trying to kick butt and chew gum, and I'm not chewing gum. Are you chewing gum? I guess we're kicking butt, dude. All right, let's go. So then you just we gotta move forward. But yeah, no, yeah, thank you so much for your time, Jade. This has been an amazing conversation. Hope to do more in the future. We're definitely gonna put like her social media link and stuff like that, guys. She's also an amazing singer. If you happen to be in like the Inland Empire area, definitely check her out. We're gonna put her socials in the description. But before we wrap up, do you have like any final thoughts, any last takeaways on the show, or anything else that you wanted to wrap up on?
No, I think it can be relatable to anyone, not just teachers. It's a fun family show, and it showcases humans experiencing life. And it can really, I think, get you through your nights, whether you want to cry, whether you want to laugh, you need some entertainment. It's so lighthearted. And I think the show itself came at a good time in this world. It couldn't have come at a better time, really. And it's just a newer take on teaching shows. It's everything you want in a show. I feel like, okay, where's my? I need to be paid for this. Excuse me, this is like like a
Sponsorship
free
opportunity.
advertisement right now. But no, I think it can really bring people together and start a conversation and
Absolutely.
spark interest and spark topics that else otherwise wouldn't have been brought to the table. So I think this is just the start of newer shows, newer topics, and really it's universal to
Absolutely.
everyone.
Bridging the gap, right? You know, we're all
Yeah.
humans, and yeah, race is a thing, but it's technically not a thing. It's just melanin, and can we just all get along? You know, can we all just, you know, we're more different, or we're more similar than we think we are different. So can we show love and appreciation? And if you want to laugh your butt off, definitely check out this show. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Jade. Let's do something a little different, guys. Leave a comment if you have like a teacher or somebody that you remember that was awesome, that impacted your life. And yeah, so yeah, maybe you can even show them this episode. Maybe they'll get some value from it. And yeah, share this to whoever you know, at least to two people. We won't be greedy here at AZ Ray Productions. You know, just say just two people you know that might get some value from this. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you again for your time, Jade. And yeah, you guys have an awesome one.
Thank you, Arturo.
Absolutely, no problem.